All right, guys. Hello there, and this is live as we can get. I think you guys can hear me. In fact, I think you can. Just adjusting the mic there, but I think you can hear me now. But yeah, I want to come on here, and as you can see, the title is, of course, this is live audio only. So you hear anything, I got a cough drop in my mouth. But it's live. And here we're doing a little bit of friendship is magic discussion on Spike and Rarity, aka Sparity, when it comes to the fandom. And the reason I want to talk about this basically is the fact that, as I mentioned before in a couple of videos, two videos before this, I did a tweet. I sent out a tweet asking a question about a picture. And the picture basically was a spike in rarity. Now, this picture I thought at first was a legit screenshot, but only later on did I realize that it was actually a animation, a drawing done by, and I want to make sure I pronounce his name right, George Gazzara. If I pronounce the last name wrong, I do apologize. But George Gazzara. And George has been known to do this. He does animations and uses vectors that I guess they find online or something, and creates pictures and animations along with those pictures at times. And he actually has a YouTube channel as well where he does this. He showcases this, and and basically and basically, what I'm trying to say, basically he has a DeviantArt page as well where he shows some of the stuff he does, and he is a big supporter. He is a big supporter, believe it or not, of Spike and Rarity. He's a huge supporter of that pairing. So anyway, he came out and he admitted that he was the one that did it. Now, the reason I brought this up, the reason I treated this, and like I said 2 videos ago, uh, in the title in the video that's called "This One Tweet Started This." That's the name of the video. I basically asked some people at Twitter, including Jim Miller, aka Biggest Jim, whether or not it was legit, and he said no. Sorry to disappoint you, it's not. And then again, it just started to uh, come from that. All of a sudden, I started to see a lot of responses. Some were disappointed that it wasn't real. Some were glad it wasn't real. Stuff like that. And then George came on and said that he was the one that done it. And even still, some people were like, "Well, I'm sorry it wasn't real. I wish it was." And what this told me, just by this amount of responses that this video was getting, or not video, but this tweet was getting, just me asking that question, it basically showed me that Sparity, the Spike Rarity relationship, friendship, however you want to look at it, has a lot of huge supporters. A lot of people are behind this, and they want to see it happen. They want to see it happen. They want to see this relationship or this situation between the two, which seems to be going in the direction a lot of people suspect it would. You know, finally, as I put it one time, as I put it, like at one time, have an end game to it, and have an end game that a lot of people could actually appreciate. And and again, just seeing that, excuse me, But just seeing that amount of, I'm just going to say that amount of support that this pairing was getting just from that one tweet, in my opinion, probably the biggest. I mean, I've done a lot of tweets on here. I mean, I'm currently tweeting out the link to this live audio podcast, if you will, or discussion as we speak. And I, to me, this is probably the most I've ever had anybody respond to a tweet. All because, like I said, I was asking Jim Miller, I was asking, um, like I said, I was asking Jim Miller, I was asking Nicole Dubuc a legit question because the one thing about these vectors that get leaked online and people find and then they draw around or animate around, you know, not only does it show you the commitment that this fan base has to the characters and situations they would like to see them in, it, how do I put this? It really, and I mean no offense when I say this, but it really kind of gives off the impression that, man, if someone could make this look real, but then find out it's not, why can't, the show staff make it real? Why can't they just, come out and say, yeah, this is the legit situation. This is real. Or something like this is going to happen. You just got to have time. Now, what's funny is during that tweet, somebody had actually asked Jim a question about Spike and Rarity. If we were going to get any more information, what was going to happen. And Jim basically said that he couldn't say anything. He basically told this person, I'm going to tell you the same thing I tell everybody else that asks that kind of a question. I can't say because he has what's known as an NDA uh, agreement, basically non disclosure agreement, to where even if he wanted to, he can't say anything without getting in trouble. And that is understandable. Don't get me wrong. If you're working for a company and you're told honestly, oh, I can't really, and you're told honestly, well, you can't really say anything, think about what's going to happen. If you want to, keep your job, you want to have a good pay, which I'm pretty sure there's no doubt that these companies give some good payouts. Don't get me wrong about that. They give decent payouts. Don't get me wrong about that. Um, but he but again, like I said, if you work for a company like that and they said, okay, we want you to do all this, but you can't say anything about what's going to happen. Um, in other words, let's put it this way: if you're working on a secret project, let's say you're working at a job like where I work, and they recruit you to be part of a secret project they want to work on, but they basically say, okay, you're going to help us out with your ideas, help us construct as well, but you have to NDA, but you have to also agree to not, but you also have to agree to NDA. And if you're wondering, and again, if you get into that, and if you get in that situation, you're wondering, well, what do you mean by NDA? And they tell you it's non-disclosure agreement. Then basically, if people are wondering, okay, what are you doing? Why are you not where we can? Like with me, I work. Like I said, I work in retail. I work as a cashier primarily, and if I'm like going to the back to a certain part of the back, and nobody sees me for a while, and let's say my CSM asks me, "Well, where have you been? What are you doing?" The thing I have to tell them is, "Look, I can't really say what we're doing. It's a project, but I can't. It's something secret. The only thing I could probably tell him is, look, I can't really say much except they asked me to help out with some kind of project, and that's all I can say. And that's basically what an NDA agreement is like. It's like somebody will say, if somebody asks, okay, well, it's like if somebody, even in Jim's family, if they would ask him, Jim, what are you working on? What's the plans for the next MLP episode? He can't really say anything to his family either. That's the entire thing. So when you have somebody basically ask Jim Miller in this same tweet that I talked about, in this same tweet, asking Jim Miller, okay, what's the next step? In fact, let me see if I can find that here. Is there any kind of plans in the future? And he says, look, I'm going to tell you the same thing I tell everybody else. I can't reveal much. I can't reveal anything. Then to me, in my opinion, and I think it's in the opinion of of anybody else, basically, basically, okay. Here's what Jim said. He responded to. I'm trying to see who asked him this question. Okay, the person called Mystery Man, who's known as 99, aka Adams on Twitter. This is what he asked. This is what he asked Jim, and this was again all in the same tweet. This is what he asked. He said, "If I may ask," this is what he was asking Jim Miller. "If I may ask, how old is Spike compared to Rarity, the rest of the main six, and the Cutie Mark Crusaders? How old are the other characters I mentioned too? And then here's the last one. Are there any plans regarding Spike and Rarity in the subplot involving them?" Which are good questions, you'd want to know. But this is what Jim Miller said. Jim Miller responded, and I quote, "We never nailed down any character's exact age eternally. We have our own personal theories / ideas, but nothing official. As for future plans, I'll tell you what I always tell you. My hashtag NDA prohibits me from discussing anything that may or may not be forthcoming on the show." Now, that's from Jim Miller. He's basically saying, look, I can't tell you anything that's going to happen with Spike and Rarity that may occur or may not occur. I can't say anything. Now, Mystery Man replied, right. In whatever case, I'm hoping Sparity can happen. I see a lot of a connection between the two of them, and I think it could work well. And then he even says, perhaps if Spike goes through, say, a growth spurt, just make him bigger and look more adult, But still, that's probably out of the, like I say, out of the tweet that I did, asking that question about that picture. For somebody to finally come out and ask someone like Jim Miller, who works closely on the show, okay, what's going on? Is there any plans? Like I said in that video I did yesterday before work, basically people will take Jim's response, where he basically states that his NDA prohibits him from discussing anything that may or may not be forthcoming on the show. A lot of people will take that as saying, okay, you can't say anything, but in a sense you just did. And what they would mean by that is, yeah, you can't say if there's anything going to happen between Spike and Rarity, but in a sense you kind of just did indicate that you're probably going to do something. Because he does say, I will give him credit, he does say anything that may or may not be forthcoming. And in the eyes, in the ears, in the eyes of somebody, again, when they read that out loud, to them it's like I said, to them it's like Jim's basically telling them, look, if I could tell you, I would, but because of this agreement I have with the NDA, I can't say anything. But a lot of people who I will admit do sometimes have a lot of time on their hands, a lot of people will come out and say that Jim's answer right there, where he's using the NDA as a reasoning, is basically his way of kind of basically, it's his way of basically saying that, yeah, something is going to happen, but I can't totally tell you what. In other words, he's saying, yeah, something will happen between Spike and Rarity, but I can't tell you if it's going to, what it's going to be or what it's not going to be. That's how some fans would interpret it. You know, with when someone says, someone in, I guess, in the business says that, it's basically their way of saying, look, I can't say, what's going to happen, and I can't say what will happen. That's the entire thing. He can't really say much either way, but some people, like I said, will take what he just said there to Mystery Man and basically be like, yeah, you can't say anything, but in a sense you just did. So yeah, it's like, again, it's like basically, them saying, it's basically, again, I know I sound like I'm repeating myself, but to anybody that would look at that, it doesn't matter if it's Jim Miller, Nicole Dubuc, Josh Haber, whoever. To them, it's just their own subtle way to somebody like a fan, a longtime fan. It's the staff's subtle way of saying, yeah, something will occur, but we can't say what it's going to be or what it's not going to be. But here's the thing. Here's the thing about Spike and Rarity. Let's just get right to it. I know that there's a lot of people that don't. Well, maybe it's not a major. It's not like a huge majority. I'll be my honest opinion from what I have seen, and I'm not saying this because I'm biased or because I'm a supporter. Spike and Rarity. I'm not saying that. I'm saying this by from what I've seen with my own eyes, that you got a majority of fans, a huge majority of fans that support Spike and Rarity, to support Sparity. There is no doubt about that. Now you do have a decent size, if not semi-major, minority, whatever, of fans that don't, and that's fine. If you're on that side of the fence that feels, hey, this whole Sparity deal is not a good idea, it's wrong, then that's fine. That's your opinion. And I've said this before, I'll say it again. A lot of people have legitimate reasonings why in their minds, why it shouldn't happen. You know, some people look at the fact that, Spike and Rarity are completely different. You go back and you watch the 200th episode, and some people will say, see, look at Spike there. He's younger than Twilight. But again, what Jim Miller basically said in that tweet is they never specifically said what the ages were. They never really internally looked at that as, give me. They never looked at that as being a priority, because to them, Spike may be a younger brother to Twilight and Shining Armor, but who's to say he's not probably around the same age? He's just small for his size. You know what I'm saying? And again, I know people will say, "Well, he was in a diaper in those flashbacks." Yeah, I get that, but here's the thing. If they wanted to nail down ages, they if they wanted to nail down the ages of the characters, they would have done that a long time ago. And by doing that, we probably wouldn't have a Spike Rarity deal. Sorry about that. Probably wouldn't have a Spike Rarity deal, and that's the truth. And I think a lot of people know that. A lot of people they know that if they nailed down, the ages and all that, we probably wouldn't have had this. Because you look at Spike in this flashback, that would be a decent argument. There's no doubt. But here's the thing. We don't know how old Spike is. For all we know, he was just young, maybe by a year or two or whatever, and he had to stay at home with the parents. Who knows? But point is, if you want to look at age as being a fact de facto or a reasoning, then then again they wouldn't be doing Spike and Rarity. They wouldn't be teasing this all the time. They wouldn't do. They wouldn't have moments like they've had throughout the series. Like okay, like with what I consider episode 8 what some consider episode 27 or episode 0 season 9, or as I look at it, season 8.5 episode best gift ever. If this was the case, if this was the case, of age and everything, they wouldn't have had Spike do the scene that he did towards the end of the special. They wouldn't have him sing his portion of The True Gift of Giving, which sounded, let's be honest, like a love song, a serenade, a love song from him to Rarity. And they wouldn't have Rarity react the way she did, with the sparks in her eyes, whatever, or the kiss on the cheek, or looking down at Spike at the closing of Twilight's portion of the song, when they were held up, or when they came together in a group, with her looking at Spike, kind of like right next to her. I mean, they wouldn't be doing that kind of stuff if there wasn't a reasoning, or should I say, if age was a factor, if age was a reasoning, they wouldn't be doing any of that. And I think that's what some people have to understand. Age, basically, when one thinks about it, I guess to the creative staff, is a non-issue. That's what it is. It's a non-issue. And some people could say, look, it is an issue. It's a reasoning. Some could use that. Some can say, look, Spike was depicted this way in episode 200. Yeah, I get that. I get he was depicted that way. But if that was a factor, if that was to play a major factor in the whole situation, in this whole, if that, what I'm getting at is, if that was to play a factor in the series, it would have played a factor a long time ago. That's what I'm getting at. Another thing I want to point out is the fact that, like I said in one video, if they wanted to end this whole Spike and Rarity thing, they would have done it a long time ago. They would have done it when they had the opportunity. A lot of people say that between uh, seasons 4 and 7, you had your moments, but you didn't have them as strongly as you had in the past. And that's where I think a lot of people should realize that if they wanted to kill it off, they wanted to end it, they would have done it back then at that moment in time. They would have done it then. But they didn't. That's the thing you got to look at. They had their opportunities between seasons 4, 5, 6, and 7 to kill it off, to basically end it, but they didn't do it. And why? Because they still had the moments here and there, which is true. Castle Sweet Castle is a good example. But what I'm getting at is they could have ended it at any time between those, what people consider down periods for the whole Spike Rarity, Sparity relationship, friendship, whatever you want to call it, romance, however you want to look at it. They could have ended it at any time, but they didn't. They did not do that. And if they didn't do it at an opportunity that was presented to them at that juncture and moment in time, then they would have done. Then basically, in my opinion, then obviously they're not going to do it. Obviously they're not going to do it, and it's like I've said before. If they didn't want to go this route, they would have had Spike go gaga crazy head over heels, if you will, for someone else. They, in the main group, they would have had her go, not her, but they would have had him. They would have had Spike go gaga crazy for Applejack, which would have been, which obviously would have appeased and, uh, well, I wouldn't say appeased, but would have pleased a lot of Applejack Spike supporters. They would have had him, fall for someone like Rainbow Dash, maybe even Fluttershy, which apparently, according to Blank Check, Blank Slate in his Blank Reacts video, they kind of teased in episode 200. Um, they would have done that already. They would have done that, with any of those characters. They would have, heck, everybody looks at season 6 and him being paired up with Starlight throughout some of the episodes in that season, and even somewhat of season 7. And a lot of them say that, they could have, and a lot of them basically look at that as them trying to tease a Starlight Spike ship, as well. They were trying to tease Spike being shipped and being connected romantically and all that with Starlight, but they didn't do that. And again, that was an opportunity. That was at a time between seasons 4, 5, 6, and 7, where they could have ended the whole Spike Rarity relationship if they wanted to go Starlight Spike, but they didn't. Again, they didn't do it. And I think a lot of people finally have to come to terms and realize that no matter what what's going to happen at the end of this season, the best gift ever is probably going to be the close. Whether or not best gift ever is the closest we're going to get, or we're going to get something occur, or we're going to get some kind of a moment or so in the upcoming episode, She's All Yak, which premieres a week from this Saturday, or somewhere down the line in the second half of the season. The point is, like I've said before, and I'll say it again, if the staff wanted to do this, if they wanted to not go the Sparity route, the Spike Rarity route, they would have ended it a long time ago, but they did not. And I think that's what some people have to understand. They had the opportunity. But they never took it. You get what I'm saying? They had the opportunity, but they never really took it. And to me, like I said, if they're not going to do it now, or if they weren't going to do it then, or even now, or whenever, they're never going to do it. And I think there's a reason for that. That reason being that they know that basically, ladies and gentlemen, that the whole Spike Rarity relationship, depending on how you look at it, no matter how many, no matter, like I said, depending on how you look at it, depending on what we get in the future before this show's out, or what we've gotten in the past recently, like with Best Gift Ever, the point is, no matter how you look at it, the creative staff looks at Spike and Rarity's friendship, relationship, romance ship, however you want to call it. They look at it as one of the main hearts and foundation, one of the main hearts of the show. They look at it as being something that if you take it out, to them, it's going to feel like there's a piece of the show missing. And that's why when you look, when you watch the series, no matter whether you like this pairing or you don't, whether you like it being teased or you don't, the point is the creative staff, as I've mentioned before, has had numerous opportunities to take it out of the series. They've had numerous opportunities and they've never taken it out. They've had moments that they've never capitalized on. They've had moments throughout, like I said, what I consider and what others consider sort of a drop period, if you will, a on the sidelines period between seasons 4 and 7, where they could have just ended it, but they didn't. They continued it on. They continued working with it. They continued playing with it. And to me, like I said, they've had, and I know I say this a lot. I know I say this a lot. Um, to me, they could have ended this a long, long time ago, but they never did. They never did. And I think we just got to realize that depending upon what happens in the future, depending on what happens in the future with the remaining, what episode we are now, what, 6 upcoming, so in the remaining 20 episodes, if you will, in the remaining 20 episodes, which begins, this Saturday with episode 6, X Common Ground. With the remaining 20 episodes, we don't know what we're going to get. We may get some moments in any of these episodes, whether it's here in the first half, whether it's in Rainbow Road Trip, the upcoming special, or it's in the second half. We're probably going to get some kind of moments here and there. There's gonna something. I'm going to be honest with you guys. If we don't get anything, then I'll look at Best Gift Ever as probably the best and the closest we're going to get. But if we do get something, I'm not going to be surprised if it's somewhat, just like I feel Best Gift Ever did in a way, that it's going to somehow, somewhat solidify, maybe semi, if not fully officialize, Spike and Rarity as an item. Because again, it's been excuse me, it's been built since almost practically episode 1. So to not follow through on that in the end, which I think is what Nicole Dubuc, Jim Miller, Josh Habert, Stephen Davis, which I think they want to do, whether the fans support it or they don't, if they don't follow through on some kind of conclusion, it's going to be like an insult. It's like to them, it's like you're doing all this, that's fine, but you need to also address these things. And if they don't get something like that in the future or before the show's over, it's going to be like an insult because you're still leaving it open and up to interpretation. Now, some might say that's great from a fan's perspective, and it is. But a lot of fans would feel that that's one thing that is, in a sense, owed to them. And not just owed to them, but owed to anybody else that's become a fan in the recent years. So, whether or not we get something before the season's out, which I believe we will in some shape, form, or fashion, it's up in the air whether it's going to be a week from this Saturday with She's All Yak, if it's going to be later on in the series, whether it's going to be Rainbow Road Trip. We don't know. It's up in the air. But it's like I said earlier, when someone like Jim Miller, in the eyes of a lot of fans, basically uses the reasoning as to not uses the NDA non-disclosure agreement reasoning to not be able to mention what's going to happen or may not happen. In a lot of fans' perspective, he's pretty much, he or Nicole or Stephen Davis or Josh Haber, whoever, or the lady writers, Christine and Joanne, they're pretty much saying, yeah, something's going to happen, but it's going to happen, but we can't say whether it's going to happen this way or that way. But by using the NDA reasoning or excuse, as some people will look at it, they're basically saying, yeah, something's going to happen, but we can't say whether it's going to happen one way or another. So that's how a lot of people look at it. And again, this is this thing with Spike and Rarity. It's been going on since the beginning, and like I said, we the fans support it or they don't. It's something that basically, if they don't get some kind of closure to it before the show's out, like I said, it's going to feel like an insult. And again, I think that, in my honest opinion, I think the creative staff knows that because of the fact that, as I mentioned, they look at the idea of Spike, this whole Spike Rarity deal, as being one of those foundations of the show, being one of those hearts, being that heart of the show, being one of those primary hearts of the show that has fans gravitate towards it and want to see what's going to happen next and what comes out of it. It's kind of like that piece of the puzzle that you have to keep in there, whether or not you believe it should be in there or not, because whether or not you feel that's a piece of the puzzle that you don't really need because you got most of it complete anyway. It's a piece of the puzzle that has to stay in there no matter what. It's the same with it's like if you go to a bar and you ask for a margarita drink with a margarita drink with the works, and there's a missing part of the works, and there's a part of the works that's missing from the margarita drink, like let's say the salt or the toothpick with the olive or whatever. To a lot of people, a margarita without the salt or the toothpick with the olive on it is not the same. It's not a true margarita unless you have everything in there. And that's what I'm getting at. That's kind of like with Spike and Rarity and the whole romance, ship, relationship, friendship, whatever you want to call it, bond. It's basically part of it's basically a part of the show that if you take it out and just get rid of it, it's going to feel like something's missing. So to me, I can't really say exactly what's going to happen, but I believe, in my honest opinion, I believe somehow, some way, before this series is over, this season's over, something is going to happen. Whether we get something addressed a week from now, whether it's before the show's out, we're going to get something. And I honestly believe, my honest opinion, is it's going to be what a lot of fans are expecting to happen, and some fans may not be thrilled about it happening, but they will agree that if it does happen, at least you'll get in a conclusion. And that's Spike and Rarity being together. I mean, it's been hinted at, like I said, since it's been basically hinted at, teased, whatever you want to call it, since the beginning. It had a bit of a drop zone period for a while, again, where I pretty much stated they had the opportunity to finally put it out the pasture, but they didn't. And then they brought it back in season 8 and Best Gift Ever, as well as even the freaking movie. Something's going to come out of this. And I think a lot of fans, even those that probably don't support it, they know what's going to come. They know and feel that what's going to come out of it is possibly Spike and Rarity together. And the creative staff, if they're listening to this, they know that's what a lot of fans are going to expect. So we'll just have to wait and see what happens. Either we get something in She's All Yak or in Rainbow Road Trip or whatever. We're going to get something, I feel, before the season's out that's going to somewhat indicate, semi, if not fully officialize these two as an item. So that's really all I can say, guys. That's all I can really say on the whole Spike and Rarity Sparity situation. And again, the reason I want to do this live is because, again, it all stems from this one tweet I did asking about this picture, which you got to go to the DeviantArt page and YouTube page of George Gazzara. There'll be a link. Hopefully, there's a link, I believe, here in the description. Check out his artwork. Check out his channel. If there's anyone out there, and there's millions of fans out there that can make it feel believable and legit, but he's one of them that made me honestly think it was. So, and even question it. So, check out his channel and his DeviantArt page. But again, just wanted to come on here and discuss this live, finally get it out of my system a little bit. I am a supporter and shipper of Spike and Rarity, so I will say that, but again, I believe somehow, some way before the show's over, and I know if the creative staff is listening, they know this is something that a lot of fans are hoping to happen as well. That we're going to get something between Spike and Rarity before the show's out. So, and again, I think the creative staff knows that anytime they use the NDA reasoning as to not being able to spill the beans or give a hint of what's to come, they're pretty much letting fans know, yeah, something's going to happen, but we can't say whether it's going to happen one way or the other. So that's all I can say, guys. Thank you all for listening. Really appreciate it. Comment down below if you didn't get the chance to listen to this live. And I will talk to you all later. God bless. Take care. Thank you all for listening. And I am out.